What's up everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today I wanted to do a video on my thoughts and experience related to my ownership of the Dodge Charger Hellcat. I've had the car now for, I bought it May 1st, and it's now the beginning of December, so what's that, about 7 months. And in that 7 months, I've gotten to drive it in the summer months, and now we're starting into the winter months. So I'm assuming my experience is going to change related to traction and all that other fun stuff that comes with having a powerful car with not the best tires from the factory, but that's a different subject altogether. So basically I just want to talk about what my experience has been to date, my thoughts about the car and things like that. So first, I just want to say that this is by far the most fun vehicle that I've ever had as it relates to driving. It's actually the most powerful vehicle I've ever owned. And as I've gotten older, and been able to afford better vehicles and things of that nature, I did have a 2014 Dodge Charger RT. At that point, that was the most powerful car I'd ever had. And it was fun in its own right, especially not having anything with that much horsepower. It was definitely a fun car to drive. But, as soon as I bought that car, about 2 months later, they announced that they were doing the Charger Hellcat. So I was quite, a little upset about that because I would have waited if possible. But it is what it is, and I finally got the Hellcat, and like I said, it's the most powerful vehicle I've ever owned. So as far as experience of having the car, so far, I've not had any major, well, actually I have had a major problem. My car was one of the unlucky cars that had the supercharger bearing issue, although some people on the forums and the internet in general said it was people, reading too much into the noise and all of that. But needless to say, I took it back to the dealer. They agreed with me, SRT agreed with me, so the supercharger was replaced. So other than that, I haven't had any other major issues with the car. It's performed flawlessly, but it is a daily driver to me in that if I have to go somewhere, I'm taking this car. It doesn't stay in the garage, all week and then only come out on the weekends. It is driven, on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, the car has almost 6,000 miles on it, and in 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to be taking it on a road trip to Florida, and round trip that's going to be about another 2,000 miles. So this car definitely gets driven. It's not something that I bought as an investment. I bought it to actually drive the thing. I'm actually leasing it. I'm not actually buying it. Haven't decided yet whether I will buy it at the end of the lease. But for now, when I went to do the lease, I did tell the dealer, they wanted to do a 10,000 mile a year lease. And I'm like, no, I plan on driving this thing. So I made them do a 15,000 mile lease. I get that's going to probably screw up my residual at the end of the lease, and I'll probably have to pay more to buy it outright if I choose to do so. I get all that, but at the end of the day, I decided that I planned on driving this vehicle, and I didn't want to have to worry about getting ready to hit my mileage limit for the year. So that's why I went ahead and did the 15,000 mile lease. Related to the rest of the experience with the car, like I said, it's fun to drive. In a minute I'll talk about the different settings that I've gone through from the perspective of when I first got it, and now what I use it, what the settings are when I drive. It's just an all-around fun car. I know some people say that these things are more straight-line cars. They're not designed for cornering and handling. I don't, well, maybe sometime I might take it on a road course. At the end of the day, spirited driving around, where I live, the car is great. It handles fine. I've not had any issues with handling. Traction, obviously, with these things is a problem. But all around, it's just been a very fun car to own. One of the painful things is obviously gas, around town, because I tend to drive with a heavy foot. I'm lucky if I get about 13 and a half miles to the gallon. I have taken it on a couple of not necessarily long road trips, a 4-hour trip to Virginia Beach. I got about 20 to 22 miles to the gallon on that. So it was obviously better. But at the end of the day, I didn't buy this expecting that I was going to be getting, Prius level gas mileage or anything like that. But it is one of the, one of the drawbacks of the car. You are spending, $40 to $50 depending on how much gas costs where you're at and how frequently you're filling it up. But back to the subject of the different settings that I've had in the course of time that I've had the car. I'm gonna go ahead and get in the car and kind of talk about the different settings I've used over the 7 months that I've had it, and what I drive in right now. All right, everyone. So here we are in the car. As I mentioned, you can see I do have actually a little over 6,000 miles currently on the car. But back to the settings. When I bought the car, when I drove it home from the dealership, I did keep it in the default mode with, everything being in street. With brand new tires. This car came with the Pirelli All Seasons. I live in the mid-Atlantic of the East Coast, and I guess the dealers feel that the All Seasons are better tires, at least for this area. So it did come with the Pirelli All Seasons, but even with those brand new tires, driving it home that night from picking it up, it was quite interesting. It did break loose, very easily, at 30 or 40 miles an hour, and just giving it quarter throttle, it was breaking loose. So I did keep everything in street until I got used to the the vehicle and the shifting and just the handling in general, and how much power is going to cause the rear end to break loose, and all that other fun stuff. After about 2 months, I started driving it with the transmission in sport, the traction control in sport, and the suspension still in street. Everything I've read online, said to keep the suspension in street to get as much weight transfer to the rear as possible. To try to help with the issue of traction and things of that nature. So I drove with it like that for, I don't know, probably another 3 to 4 months. So right around, I guess, maybe the beginning of September, maybe even the middle of September, I started driving with the transmission and track. So everything else was still the same. Traction control was in sport. Suspension was in street, but I did start driving the transmission and track. You can see that that is my custom setting right now, and I can tell you it's a huge difference, at least to me. Others will feel differently, I'm sure, but at least to me, it's a huge difference between definitely street and track, but even sport and track. It's when this thing shifts in track under heavy acceleration, it feels like you just got kicked in the back. Some people may like that. I personally do like it. Other people might find it rather aggressive and actually a little overkill. I know sometimes when I'm driving and it shifts that hard, it does, kind of make me wonder if the ass end's going to break loose or whatever. But, it's definitely a different driving experience. And, I love it. I've been driving that way, like I said, since the beginning of September. And, now that it's going into the winter months, I might set it back to sport. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But overall, like I said, the car is great to drive. My ownership experience with it has been fantastic. Save the replacement of the supercharger. And even that, I expected there to be all kinds of problems with the dealer. But, I had called SRT, told them what was going on. I had uploaded some audio of it. I actually have a YouTube video on my channel of what the car sounded like. I went to the dealer, they listened to it, and they said, yep, it sounds like the bearing issue. So they contacted SRT, did some additional troubleshooting, and after about an hour and a half of being there, they came in and said, we're going to order a new supercharger. And about a week and a half later, I took it back in and they replaced the supercharger. The only gripe I do have is they did damage the front end of the car when they did the replacement of the supercharger. There's a small little, I don't know if you would call it a gouge, more of an indentation right where the front bumper meets the hood. I don't know if something got set down there. I don't know if the technician, when he was leaning across the hood, his belt buckle, gouged into the bumper. I don't know.
But that was a little, pissed me off a little bit. But like I said, they replaced the supercharger, and the car seems to be all right since then.
I'm thoroughly happy with my decision to trade in my 2014 RT to upgrade to this. I love the Go Mango color. My 2014 RT was actually the header orange. One of the things that amazes me about this particular color is how much the color shifts, in direct sunlight versus in the shadow. Like right now, inside the garage, it's more of a reddish color, but in direct sunlight, it actually looks more orange in nature. I actually have some drone footage of the car actually outside in the sun. I'm going to link to that in this video as well, so you'll be able to see what I'm talking about with the shifting color. That's one thing I'm finding with this car is, this car is definitely something to, keep you occupied. I've learned how to correctly detail a car since having this thing. I've learned all kinds of stuff that I never, I had a general idea of, automotive stuff and, that kind of stuff, but, never really cared about doing this stuff myself. I went out and bought a quick jack lift. I'm going to do another video on that at some point, but, went out and bought the lift so that I could purposely, lift the car and be able to do my own maintenance on stuff. The one thing I don't do, though, is I don't do my own oil changes. After reading online about, the fact that there's 20-some bolts and push pins that you have to take off to remove the shrouding just to get to the oil drain pan, or the plug in the oil pan to drain the oil. This thing's going to the dealership for that. I don't have time or patience for that. If I'm going to spend time working on the car, I'd rather do something that's more enjoyable, like, detailing it, or, working on the wheels and, doing some of the stuff like the tail light tinting, which I'll be doing soon, the engine bay lights and that kind of stuff. But, for anybody that's, thinking about getting one of these, or is, kind of on the fence, maybe you already have an RT, maybe you have a Scat Pack. Scat Pack, maybe not so much. I mean, a Scat Pack and these things are fairly close. Some people would actually say that the Scat Packs are better. When you get up to the horsepower that this thing has, you can't get it to the ground, so what's the point? Whereas with a Scat Pack, it's more manageable to get the horsepower actually to the ground. So some people would actually say Scat Packs are probably the better investment. But if you have an RT or even a 6-cylinder and you're thinking about, upgrading, to me it's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, if you can afford it, you can afford the upkeep, you can afford, the gas and, all of that other stuff that goes with, the ownership of this kind of vehicle, I say it's a no-brainer. I am definitely not upset with my decision to upgrade to the Hellcat from the RT in any way, shape, or form. It was a challenge, getting permission, I should say. Anybody that's married knows what I'm talking about. Permission to get the Hellcat, but at the end of the day, she likes it. Like I said, we go out, we have a good time. Sometimes she's still pretty scared when I get into it, but she's coming around to it. I have let her drive it one time, and she was coming out of a yield, and the car got completely sideways, even after I told her, not to give it too much gas and stuff like that. So needless to say, she hasn't driven it again since then. But thanks for watching the video. I know this has been kind of long and rambling, and I apologize about that, but I did want to kind of get my thoughts down as to how I feel about owning the car. So again, thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I do plan on trying to keep as much current content as possible on the channel. You can watch some of the other videos I've already done around some of the products that I use and things of that nature. So thanks for watching.